Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by Rick Vavro and Austin Underground. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every morning by Bobby Burton and CJ Vogel. And before we begin, we love hearing where you guys are from, so please check in the chat. Let us know. It's always exciting to see where everybody is around the world tuning in, so please do that. And guys, let's start with the team heading off to New Orleans yesterday. They departed Austin in early afternoon. CJ, I know you got a little note on that. I'm going to let you share with folks.
Yeah, I got word from, folks inside the buses as they departed for the airport from Moncrief in Austin at the send-off party yesterday around 11:15, 11:30. Obviously, a great crowd from the Texas faithful showing out and supporting their team as they departed for the Sugar Bowl. I was told the team was very appreciative of it. They loved the support. They liked, seeing just how much of the Longhorn faithful came out and to wish them goodbye as they departed for New Orleans. And then obviously as they landed, there's another slew of Longhorn fans out there, obviously a lot more media members and some, New Orleans twist to it as well, a little Cajun, spice, if you will, added to the arrival. Christian Jones was actually the Longhorn first off the plane. He held a Longhorn flag as he departed. And that was, I was told it was a little bit of a congratulations, Christian kind of moment for him. One of the veteran guys on this Longhorn team, has been around through thick and thin, obviously prior to Steve Sarkisian's arrival. And he was given, kind of the nod of the cap from the Texas staff to say, here you go lead the team off the plane, carry the flag, and thank you for what you've done to this program. And let's keep going and get this job finished completely. So pretty cool deal. And, to Christian Jones, I'm sure it meant a whole lot.
Definitely. And then Bobby, once the coaches arrived there in New Orleans, they had some press conferences, and Sark included, obviously. What were some of your major takeaways from his press conference?
Sark was typical Sark. I mean, he's really kind of cool, calm, and collected for the most part. Tries to emphasize a few things in each presser, I think. The ones that I took notes on yesterday, and I know you've chopped up some of the video from it, Blake, for people to rehear it. But he talked about the game plan, guys, and where and when Texas kind of instituted the game plan. That was a week ago, prior to them leaving for Christmas. Then he talked about how the team it has been focused and needs to remain calm and focused during the game because, there's going to be big times and they got to just keep their focus. And then the last thing I wrote down is they have to meet adversity head on. And that, big games have big moments and they're not always going to go your way. Washington's going to make plays, period. That they're 13-0 for a reason. Texas, though, is 12-1 for a reason too. And so they have to meet adversity head on and then overcome it, which is, I think, a great conversation for all of us, really. I mean, in any line of business or work, that's what you want to do. And so I felt like Sark was typical Sark, pretty straightforward, not over the top on any one particular thing, but just a good all-around press conference. Kellen DeBoer was also at the mic yesterday as Washington arrived as well. The Longhorns, I think it's important. They will meet with the media. Xavier Worthy, Jalen Ford, they'll meet with the media around 9:45 today. We'll have footage from that on Texas football for you guys. Also, I would say this, Texas practices, I believe, at the Dome at around 2:00. That is not available or open to the public for anybody that's in New Orleans. It's only media for the first 10, 15 minutes. But I would reiterate something I was told yesterday and the day before. Texas is very healthy right now heading into it. The team had position meetings yesterday morning before getting on the bus and going. They had some walkthrough stuff yesterday that they worked on once they got in. Now the rest of their days are going to be dealing with media and going to practice and then dealing with nighttime events that are customary of bowl games like the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, no doubt that injury note is very important, Bobby, as it's been a very long time since the team's been, about 100% healthy.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece of it. Look, people have asked about Xavier Worthy over and over again. I think he's fine. I do think that he had a ginger ankle, coming out of the Oklahoma State game. But I think that's had time to heal. The big piece for me, and I think that what people are asking about or talking about that is relevant, is how does Texas and how does Texas and how does Washington keep their consistency, their rhythm, coming after almost a whole month worth of latency and not practicing against heavy. One of the things Sark talked about yesterday was exactly that. Hey, we went good on good, but we didn't sit there and knock each other's teeth in the dirt. You know what I mean? And so keeping that consistency through that and that rhythm through this whole month, I think it may be problematic for both teams early in the game. I expect them to get better as the game wears on, though.
For sure. And then, of course, as you said, Kalen DeBoer did meet with the media, and he had quite the praise for Quinn Ewers. And I got that clip right here, and we'll play it real quick. But he was very well. You can just hear it for yourself.
I think the thing you see is that he's had continual growth from a year ago, and that's not just Quinn, but also just the rest of the team. And he, along with his skill group, are in sync. You can see that they're executing at an extremely high level. I think his command of the offense has continued to improve from a year ago. And so, we're expecting a much different football team than we saw, which was a very good football team even a year ago. And so, he's protected. He understands, I think, just from a football sense, it's another year into your career. And so been very impressed. He can deliver the ball, put it wherever he wants. And, we'll have our hands full, trying to slow Quinn and the offense down.
Yeah, it's clear that they have Kellen DeBoer has some respect for the Texas offense. I watched the rest of that presser. He's got some confidence in his own team, as well he should. Look, the Texas still favored in this game by Vegas, but not by the ESPN stats folks. They still say that there's a 53% chance that Washington wins this game. We'll see exactly what that means and how that all plays out, but it should tell you that this game is essentially a toss-up. That we can go into all the data and all the reasons and pick everything apart, but at the end of the day, whoever plays better on Monday, that's the team that's advancing to play for the national championship.
Yeah, and I can see it going either way, and I think anybody can. So it's going to be a good one for sure. Well, another bowl game that was played last night, Bobby, that had quite a few players missing. It was the Texas A&M and Oklahoma State. We've already got a lot of comments about it here in the chat. And ugly might be the best word to describe it. I don't know. It was, you can't really judge A&M when they only had 55 scholarship players available. Can you?
No, and they lost their quarterback on the first play of the game.
Yeah.
The one that they had been thinking was going to start, one who did start, Javon Henderson. Marcel Reed, a freshman, came in, played admirably, but doesn't look like he has the arm strength to really be a threat long-term in the SEC, in my opinion. I would add this about that game, because I watched it. A&M just couldn't run the ball much at all game long. That means they were relying on a freshman quarterback. The A&M receivers are okay, but they're none of them scare you, if that makes sense. Moose Muhammad is pretty good, but he's more of a possession guy than he is a deep threat. I don't know that any of the A&M receivers really scare you going forward, especially without Evan Stewart apparently next year for them. I would add this, and CJ, I'd like to get your feel on it. A&M took a lot of young DBs last year. Javon Thomas, Bravion Rogers, young man out of Shiner, Dalton Brooks. Of that group, I really only saw one that said, hey, this guy's going to be something long-term, and that was Dalton Brooks. Bravion Rogers he looked out of place Javion Thomas, not big enough against and they just, I mean, Alan Bowman and OSU just literally picked on them all night long. They just threw 50-50 balls.
Yeah.
And A&M couldn't handle it. The interesting piece is they clearly have something going on defense. They have some players. That secondary, though, still remains a big old fat question mark, in my opinion. I mean, those young guys aren't going to be ready next year for them. Maybe Dalton Brooks will be. I think he's a future NFL guy. The rest of them, they're going to have problems in the secondary again next year, would be my guess.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And this is an Oklahoma State team whose real identity was relying on Ollie Gordon throughout most of the season to get big chunk plays through the ground and then using the offense as a complementary weapon, not necessarily the forefront of how they move the ball offensively. So when Ollie Gordon, who, wasn't necessarily getting a whole lot of rushing room, I think he had 1 carry over 20 yards, and then probably negated that with a personal foul right after that for unsportsmanlike conduct. But that wasn't really the approach for Oklahoma State last night. Obviously, we saw Rashad Owens and who is it? Brennan. Who I'm losing the name of this.
Brennan Presley.
Yes, Brennan Presley. On the opposite side, the 50-50 balls were there all night. Rashad Owens especially. I thought he was tremendous. Well over 150 receiving yards last night, a couple touchdowns. I mean, it didn't seem fair at points because it just looked so easy on these go routes on the outside for Alan Bowman, who seemingly at the end of that game tried to give it away a few times, but to the Oklahoma State defensive credit, it kind of preserved the lead. I actually liked what I saw from Marcel Reed. I thought for a freshman stepping in, there was some moments of, all right, he can get the job done at times, but obviously a young quarterback. Bobby, you mentioned the arm strength, something that we'll have to improve. I'm not sure if he's going to be, enough to dethrone Connor Wakeman, who, in my opinion, is a very good quarterback. So all around a pretty, I don't want to call it sloppy, but an interesting game at the least from both teams. And I don't know, man. Like
I thought the Aggies, for their defense to be the focal point, they look bad on defense. I thought they looked like they were, attackable by air pretty easily. Clearly not ready for the hurry up style, by the way, of Oklahoma State. Totally caught off guard. Jimbo Fisher just did them a disservice. I don't know how else to say that. I mean, not only did they have to end up paying him $70-something million. I mean, he just did not. I don't know whether it was lack of discipline or letting the inmates run the asylum, so to speak, there, or what the issue is. But they just don't have any kind of camaraderie is not the right word. I mean, culture may be the right word. Actually, they just lack it entirely. I would add this: Rashad Owens, CJ, for as good a game as he had 3 or 4 other balls that hit him in the chest or in the hands that he could add another 100 yards for.
Yeah,
I mean, so it wasn't like that 150 was, oh wow, he had an unbelievable game. He had a good game and made some tough catches. Yeah, I mean, he could have been 250. Brennan Presley, the Aggies still don't know how to defend the bubble screen. So, in Oklahoma State missed a field goal late to even give the Aggies a chance to stay within one score. So I don't think the final score 31-23 was necessarily indicative of really the difference in that game. Oklahoma State controlled that game from about midway through the first quarter on.
I was impressed with Elko in the booth, though. I thought he was better than the 2 announcers that called the game, to be honest. I think I'd just slide right in the booth, take that easy money.
Yeah, I think he does. He definitely is a smart coach. We'll see if he can put everything together in one place. That's going to be my question for Mike Elko. It's a big step up from Duke to Texas A&M in the expectation level.
All right, Bobby, before we move on and get to questions, and by the way, plenty of time to get your questions in, so please do so. Tell folks out there about Rick Vavro and Austin Underground.
Yeah, absolutely. Since 2004, Rick and his team at Austin Underground have specialized in difficult underground commercial installations The team's engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms often just consider too risky. Rick and his team offer an end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they produce solid quality work each and every time. That's Austin Underground. Give Rick and his team a call if you have any big projects going on that require underground commercial installations.
I want to thank them for sponsoring each and every Thursday right here on Coffee and Football. And let's jump right into it. We got a super chat to open it up with in Tub in Texas. Thank you, sir. He says, good morning. Sark's opening script will be nasty.
Let's hope.
Yes.
CJ, what do you think, bud?
No, I'm almost to the point where it has to be. We've talked about Washington starting hot. You can't allow them to get out to a lead, a double-digit lead at that. So, yeah, I'm with it. He's done very well the last 2 games. If that carries over, I like Texas's chances to be up in the first half.
They got it. They have to, to your point, they have to thwart Washington's quick start. If Sark can do that with his own script of sorts, that would be that'll play a big role. There's a lot of questions out here that I mean, this one's a good one too, Blake, that I just love. Who are your players of the game on offense, defense, special teams, keys to the game? There's just so many different questions we can get to, but this kind of encapsulates all of them. CJ, is there a guy on offense? Like, I feel like Quinn Ewers has to have a great game, but then one of the 2 receivers, either Mitchell or Worthy, have to have that game that's kind of above and beyond their average. I mean, above and beyond just good. They have to, one of those 2, I think, is going to have a great game for Texas to win.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I actually mentioned it to Rod last night on the live stream. It has to be either Kelvin Banks or Christian Jones for me. If you can
not the receivers,
not
the receivers.
I'll explain it because I'm very certain on this. If you neutralize Braylon Trice, there's not another guy on that Washington defense who can get to the quarterback consistently. Braylon Trice has more pressures alone than the next 3 leading pressure getters from the Washington defense combined. That to me tells me if you take away the head of the snake, the rest of the snake can't attack. And I'm looking at, the rest of that edge team, and the interior line doesn't create a lot of pressures at all. None of them have double-digit pressures on the year, according to Pro Football Focus. So Braylon Trice is really that one threat to me, where if you neutralize him and Quinn Ewers is able to sustain a clean pocket for most of the night, he will distribute the football to Jordan Whittington, Jatavian Sanders, A.D. Mitchell, out of the backfield to the running backs, and obviously Xavier Worthy. It's all about keeping him clean and unpressured. If he's able to do that, the ball will find who it needs to get to. And I think Texas will have a good day offensively as a result. But if Braylon Trice is able to create pressure and Texas has to then adjust, kind of the blocking patterns and allow other guys one-on-one opportunities that they normally would not, that's when things get a little dicey for me on the offensive line. Taking care of Braylon Trice wins you the football game on the offensive side of the ball.
He is if y'all are wanting to know about him, he is number 8. He's going to be number 8 on the Washington defense. What about on the defensive side of the ball? Is there anybody in particular you're thinking has to have a great game? I'll give mine. Mine is Jalen Ford, because he's going to be the guy that's going to be in constant conflict between stopping the run and the back end of the defense and coordinating the 2 aspects of it, right? That's the guy who last year I didn't think actually had a great Alamo Bowl, even though he had 8 tackles in the loss. I felt like he could have seen and done more in that game, but Washington does a great job of putting those linebackers in conflict in the first place. Is there a player on defense, CJ, where you feel like, hey, this dude needs to step up?
Yeah, it's Michael Taft. And we've talked about the Texas safeties and how well they need to play and how often they will be targeted by the Washington offense. Michael Taft is one of those guys that you don't see in the box too often. He is that back deep safety, that free safety, if you will, in terms of just don't let anything behind you. And he's been rewarded at times this year. Obviously, you look at the Houston game, the overthrow in the end zone ended up being a pretty valuable play for the Longhorns in terms of that victory. He's a hustle guy. We've talked about the Baylor stop at the line of scrimmage, heading into the end zone, and obviously the interception against Kansas State to start the second half. We've seen him be rewarded for his hustle. Now we need to see him be rewarded for being in the right place at the right time and not allowing things to get behind him, because we know that Washington offense is going to be targeting that safety group. It's Michael Taft.
All right, guys, we got a question here from Mark, and he says that his question for y'all is, in the context of a 30-day layoff and execution, which side of the ball, offense or defense, has an advantage on execution, timing, etc.?
I think defense, no questions asked, because you can't contextualize the speed of the game on offense just running routes against air or even against, in thud tempo. You can't. And that's why one of the reasons why I think Texas played well at the end of the year is Quinn Ewers finally got that down, right? And now you've had a month off. So I think it favors the defense early in games like this, especially now. I will say this, especially for passing offenses. Mm-hmm. Rushing dominated offenses, I do not agree with that. Like Michigan and Alabama that are run oriented, they're going to look okay early in a game. All right. I think the passing game will heat up midway through the first, through probably the third quarter, and then we'll start seeing a tightening of screws, so to speak, on what the other team is trying to do. I want to get back to this and ask about special teams too, because that last comment that we had has gotten me thinking. I've been thinking about this. Bert Auburn has to have a great game. No free points given away. Yep. So, Texas gets a 52-yard field goal attempt. I know it's asking a lot, but they need to make it, right? No free points given away. And then I look at special teams, and I'm thinking Keelan Robinson, Ryan Sanborn, the punter, the gunner, and then Keaton Crawford. Those are your guys. Maybe Xavier Worthy in a kick or in a punt return opportunity. Washington doesn't punt an awful lot, as we know. But my point being, special teams, if you can win on fourth down, Texas, if offenses are going to be both good, which we think they will be, if you can win on fourth down, that could be the thing that pushes the game in your direction, as opposed to somebody else's.
Speaking of, go ahead, TJ. Go ahead.
No, on the Sanborn part and the Gunners turning a 50-yard punt and 40 yards, that builds up. Making Washington go that extra first down to get down into the end zone. That is very key for me. The free yards, the free points that you mentioned, Bobby, those add up over time, and you can't keep giving those away if you want to be a national champion.
Mike Gundy 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now talked about how Texas was 300 plus yards over its opponents on the year. Yep. Okay. That's roughly 30 yards a game. To CJ and to CJ's point, that's making Michael Penix complete 2 more passes. One more big run. I mean, yes, he has a big arm and all this other stuff. But my point being that little nudge, right? That little bit in a tight game can be extremely meaningful.
While y'all were talking about special teams, I was looking up some stats here. In kick return defense, Washington is 11th in the nation. Texas is not in the top 50. Punt return defense, Washington is also 11th in the nation. Texas 38. On kickoff returns, Texas is 49th in the nation. Washington 50th.
So both teams basically try to, and look, that's why they're 13-0 and 12-1. I mean, right? This is a really, I think it's an evenly matched group of teams. Yes, I think Texas may have more overall depth and talent, but Washington has more experienced talent at quarterback in particular. Adunze is as good as any receiver on the field. They've got an explosive offense. We'll see how it goes. I mean, look, if I knew how this game was going to go, I'd tell you. I don't. I genuinely don't. I've got a feel for it, and I think it's going to be a fourth quarter game where whoever has the ball last is going to have a chance to win the game. That is, I don't think it's going to be this 3-score game like some people have talked about, either one way or the other. I feel like this is going to be a tight one that's going to come down to the wire in New Orleans.
Well, Bobby, we have a Michigan fan in the chat. And Seth Floyd says Washington is going to have a tough time keeping up with the speed of Texas receivers. If Ewers doesn't turn the ball over, he does have Texas by 3 touchdowns because he doesn't think Washington's going to be able to keep up. So there's some people out there that are confident for Texas, but I'm with you. I think it's going to be a close one.
Look, Oregon has speed at receiver. I mean, they're not slow at receiver, and they did okay against them. Oregon made it a game late because they actually started getting the receivers more involved than they were able to early. But I do think Texas has speed, and that should be an advantage. But again, this is a game of 2 teams that are really good. Anything else, you wouldn't expect anything else. You're happy to be here. Certainly, if you're Texas and Washington, you're in the college football playoff. You play for this the whole year, but you understand that the other team across from you, they're pretty good too.
Yep. And
you got to give them their respect.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, we're going to take some more questions right here on Coffee and Football, presented by Rick Vavro and Austin Underground. And Specker54 says, on the flip side of the last comment, Washington's pass game scares the hell out of me, but we're so much more of a complete team. I'm starting to feel pretty confident. I think it scares a lot of people.
No, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
And then MJF, you've told us that Washington likes to run wide. If Sweat's job is to push Washington's undersized center into the backfield every play, will we move Murphy out to a 3 gap to disrupt off-tackle runs?
It sounds great on paper. Washington's been great at hiding their center in the run game with pulling guards and tackles. The pinch and pull on the outside run with the tight end coming down to pinch the outside and the tight end to waterfall over the top creates, kind of that extra blocker in space, a good blocker at that with the offensive tackle. So they do a great job. They pulled multiple offensive linemen often. You'll see the center pulled all sorts of combinations with the center guard, center tackle, guard tackle, everything that you can imagine. They have it, and they've shown it against Oregon. Texas will have to obviously prove it and defend it in multiple ways. The thing, like I mentioned earlier, is, Parker Brailsford, the center, is only 295 pounds. He is undersized by that metric. However, you would have thought at some point this year, another team with a big defensive tackle would have said, all right, let's pair them up with one another and let's, get into the backfield. That hasn't necessarily happened, especially in the passing game where only 4 sacks have been allowed by this offensive line. So that's, again, in theory, it's tremendous. Yeah, we got a guy that's 365, the Outland Award-winning trophy winner. Just put him, line him up right outside the that 290-pound center and let him work. It doesn't work like that. They hide him very well. They send help very well to him as well. And again, I've mentioned it last night. The 2 guys to his right and left, the offensive guard, Julius Bulow and Nate Caleppo, those are the 2 biggest guys on the offensive line. That help and that chip is they didn't do that by accident. That's by design. They help and they chip and they ensure that center, who was the backup coming into the season, is not at a mismatch or prone to be really just picked apart.
I would add this. You mentioned about moving Murphy out to a 3. What about moving Alfred Collins out to 5?
Yeah.
For that, we talked about that a little bit in with Rod and you, CJ. What do you think about moving and going in with that bigger lineup against the run, and then possibly having looking with Barron Sorrell being the 4th down guy, right? Along or four down, one of the 4 down players alongside Alfred Collins out at the 5 technique. You think that Texas will show some of that? They did that at times throughout the year in certain situations, especially against Baylor, right? And it really showed some value there. Baylor loves to run outside. I will say this, Washington runs it a little bit differently than Baylor. Baylor's more of that outside zone. Washington's more of to your point, pen and pull type of situation on the outside. Do you think that would help Texas? Or do you think that's going to help Texas, having the flexibility to do that in certain situations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think early on in the game, it will be good for Texas to show that. Obviously, last year we saw Texas play with a light box in fear of the deep pass. essentially saying, Washington, if you're going to beat us with the run. And that's ultimately what they did. This year, I'm much more confident that the Texas rush defense will stand up in comparison to what they did last year. Obviously, 160 yards, almost 5.5, 6 yards per carry. That's been a number that Texas hasn't seen given up by their rushing defense all season long, essentially. So I'm looking at that big defensive line as a way to say, yeah, we're still going to play with a light box, but we're now going to have almost 1,000 pounds worth of defensive linemen that you're going to have to push around for you to get any type of true running lane in your attack offensively for Washington. So I like that attack. Obviously, you need speed on obvious passing downs, 3rd and long, 2nd and long. I like the flexibility it provides. You can move Collins inside, take Sweater Murphy off, add Barron Sorrell or Ethan Burke on the outside as well. And obviously you have Anthony Hill, who Rod pointed out last night, 5 sacks on the year, and 4 of them have come against Alabama, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State. So big games. He's deployed much more differently than against, a Baylor, Iowa State, somewhere where you don't necessarily need to show off the Ferrari because eventually he will get you past the finish line regardless of the speed that he goes.
All right, guys, this next question here is from Hair Trigger. And Hair Trigger says, do y'all think Washington will go hurry up on offense to try and throw off the D-line from disrupting Michael Penix?
I don't think so. I've thought about this. It makes no sense for them to do that. That's not who they are. It hasn't been all year. I don't see them shying from who they are. I see them just trying to be who they've always been. Yes, and CJ, you mentioned this. They'll line up quickly, but then they'll motion 7 times just like Sark does, to try to discombobulate the defense. They're not about going fast. They're about getting to the line of scrimmage fast so they can identify the defense early, not necessarily going fast.
All right, before we move on to some more questions, guys, I know that y'all are both planning to go on the road here pretty soon, actually. Tell folks where you're going. CJ, I'm going to start with you as I know you're heading out far east.
Yeah, I'm headed to the Sunshine State and the bright, or I guess the dim nights of winter. So I'm looking forward to it. Headed out to the Under Armour All-American game and their practices out this weekend. 7 Longhorns out there participating. Jarrett Gibson and Daniel Cruz on offense. Xavier Filsaime, Kobe Black, Jordan Johnson, Rubel in the defensive secondary, and then obviously Colin Simmons and Zena Umeozulu in the defensive line. So lots of Longhorn talent. And then, man, after that, headed straight to New Orleans. And after New Orleans, we're headed to San Antonio for the All-American Bowl. Trey Owens, Ryan Wingo, and Michael Kern out there. So lots of Longhorns to be seen. I'm really looking for getting to see and talk to a lot of these guys once again now that they have inked their pledge and their signature to the Longhorns.
We'll try to get CJ to get a couple of those guys on camera for us while he's out there this weekend too. I'm headed over to New Orleans later today, ready to get going. You will not see this background for the next 4 or 5 days. It'll be a different one. I am going to bring all my hats though. I'm a little superstitious, so I bring them all with me everywhere. I'm kidding. I don't bring them all. I bring more than one though, for sure. I'm ready to get going. Hey, people, let's tell people a little bit about this here. I think this is there's a lot of folks going to New Orleans this weekend, and I want to tell people about this because I've done this, and it's absolutely the truth.
Really
MJF morning. If you haven't yet, when in NOLA and have extra time, go visit the National World War II Museum. It's incredible. Yep. Could not agree more. I mean, I'm a little bit of a history buff, but I'm not overwrought with it. It's one of the things I'm more about sports history. That's kind of always been my thing, right? This is an unbelievable museum. It really is. If you do have time, you show up on Saturday sometime, go there for an hour or two, just whatever you can to soak it in. It's one of the best museums, in my opinion, I've ever been to overall. Like not just, been to the Holocaust Museum in DC, been to the Gary in LA, where it's just kind of just unbelievable. But or the Getty, excuse me. I feel like it is one of those places that everybody should go to if you get a chance. It's just tremendous.
Sorry, I was muted there. Since we're talking about that, we're going to ask this question from Captain Americano: beignets or king cake?
You got to say it right. It's beignet.
Beignet, excuse me.
Beignets. Come on now.
I butcher everything,
Goodness
Bobby.
gracious.
If it's not West Texan, I butcher it.
I got a list. I got a list from Joe Diaz, who's the head of the New Orleans Texas X's. Okay, and he gave me this list about right when Texas got into the Sugar Bowl, and he said, "Do not go to Cafe Du Monde for your beignets and coffee." I've always done that. So I've been going to New Orleans since I was in my early 20s. I've always done that, but he's saying not to do that. He's got, let's see, best beignets according to Joseph, and this is the head of the New Orleans Texas X's. Cafe Beignets is number 1. The Vintage is number 2. And then he said anywhere else is number 3, and Cafe Du Monde is number 99. So he apparently, who lives there, does not think Cafe Du Monde is all that it's cracked up to be. I will say that I love the coffee at Cafe Du Monde. It's like that old chicory type coffee that's really, really dark. It feels like you're drinking sludge a little bit, and I'm okay with that early in the morning. So just so you know, coffee and football as it is.
There you go. All right. Well, we're going to get to some more questions here. And let's take this one from Longest Horn. He says, have y'all heard anything about Ryan Watts trying out at safety? CJ?
Not for this game, I haven't. I've heard Jahdae Barron has been getting looks at safety more as I don't want to say an emergency, but if things get, pretty thin, which they already are, if they get thinner at that safety spot, look for Jahdae Barron to take a couple snaps back there until Derek Williams returns. Next year, Ryan Watts, a move to safety would make sense. Or at least a testing out of different spot in the secondary would make sense to me, with obviously Terrence Brooks and Malik Muhammad set to be, that guy, those two guys on the outside. In my opinion, a move to safety for next season would make sense for me for Ryan Watts, but not for this game.
He's repped there only in his freshman year when Ohio State moved him from corner to safety. I don't see that being a possibility. They are looking for depth at safety right now. I love Ryan Watts and what he can do from a physical standpoint on a big receiver like Rome Odunze at the line of scrimmage. I'm concerned about what happens 15 yards down the field.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change necessarily, even if he's a safety. Because I think Ryan Watts is probably a 4'6", 4'5", 40-yard dash guy. Even though he plays corner at a place like Texas, he just doesn't have that true makeup speed. And I think you're going to need that going forward, especially in the SEC, by the way. That's why a Derek Williams, Xavier Fils-Aimé, those kind of guys long-term make more sense for Texas. And so I don't know where Watts, if he decides to return, would actually fit next year. Probably more at safety, to CJ's point, than corner.
Now let's jump over to the other side of the football. Auto Pro says, I think if Jordan Whittington has a great game, it will be a game changer. But let me ask you guys this. How important is it going to be for Whittington to be involved against Washington?
Go for it.
I'll start, Bobby. I've got thoughts because it's coming in. You talk about Rome Odunze, you talk about Jalen Polk. Obviously, Jalen McMillan is that third guy. When you think about the third guy for Texas, it's obviously Jordan Whittington. But that third guy, if you're not accounting for him, I mean, it can really, really hurt you defensively. If Texas isn't paying enough attention and kind of veering off to help, on the outsides, it will be McMillan, who has 500 yards receiving this year, who will torch them. And luckily for Texas, Jatavian Sanders is also in that mix. So it is Jordan Whittington who's going to be flying under the radar more so than anybody else. For Texas, I mean, and Whittington specifically, we've seen how valuable he can be in a game this year, and we've seen it throughout his career. Obviously, 120 yards, I want to say, against Oklahoma on 10 catches this season already. If he is proven to be that guy that Quinn Ewers feels is the guy to go to this game, I'm comfortable with that. He's proven it. We know what he can do with the ball on third down specifically and also after the catch. So I think, if Texas does think, Jordan Whittington is going to be the go-to guy, good luck, because falling asleep on a guy like Xavier Worthy or AD Mitchell is not a recipe for success. And I know that after snaps and drives of not seeing any action, that's something DBs tend to do, especially when they think that they're having a great game against a great receiver.
Well, I go back to this. Let's talk about this. I looked at the Texas-Oklahoma State game, and I was thinking about this yesterday. Actually, what will be, so to speak, the X factor. And I'm not talking about Xavier Worthy. Like, what can be the X factor? And I go back to Oklahoma State, right? Well, Quinn Ewers, we is not an X factor. He's a primary, right? So we've got that. So here are the potential X factors. Jordan Whittington, right? He's not a seminal piece of the offense, even though he's on the field every time. JT Sanders, right? He had a big game against Oklahoma State, 8 catches, 105. Whittington had 4 for 48. And then the other 2 guys that aren't talked about a lot that could be those X factors for Texas, Jaden Blue, right? 10 carries against Oklahoma State, and Keelan Robinson. So I don't know if y'all have noticed or not, but Keelan Robinson has become more a part of the offense over the last half of the season than what he was early in the year. Now, perhaps that's because Jonathan Brooks' injury. And I get that. I think that's fair because Brooks was so good in the screen game, CJ. Yeah. He kind of weaved his way through people a little bit better than maybe CJ Baxter or Jaden Blue runs by him. Brooks kind of set up his blocks. Baxter's just that power guy, right? That's looking to combine power and speed and maybe run through guys. I think those are the X factors for Texas, not just Whittington, but Sanders / Helm at some degree. How did they get him involved? Because they're going to run so much 12 personnel. You know that. And then you add Jaden Blue and Keelan Robinson. Any of those guys have big games, and that's a check mark, in my opinion, because Washington's going to try to make sure Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell don't beat them, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah.
And the typical run game doesn't beat them. So who is?
Yeah. No, I love the Keelan Robinson pick, Bobby. His last 2 games, I just looked it up. Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, two games where the Texas offense really didn't show any signs of slowing down at any point. 7 touches, 105 yards, so 15 yards per clip, 3 offensive touchdowns, and a kick return touchdown. If you talk about effectiveness, that's it. That's Keelan Robinson right there.
All right, guys. Well, before we move on here, I'm going to tell everybody out there about Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game. You simply pick between 2 to 6 players, and if they'll go more or less than their Prize Picks projection. It's just you versus the projections available instead of battling thousands of other players out there. It's really simple to play. It takes almost no time. I can submit my picks or make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. And what I love about Prize Picks is that it adds a ton of excitement to the sports viewing experience. You can watch your progress update in real time. You can win up to 25 times your entry amount, and then you cash out your winnings with their quick withdrawals. All you have to do is go to prizepicks.com/OnTexas, use promo code OnTexas, and they're going to give you a first deposit match of up to $100. And I'm all over the bowl action on Prize Picks today. I'm selecting Kansas State quarterback Avery Johnson to rush for less than 63 yards. Kansas State running back DJ Giddens to rush for more than 107. And I'm also taking OU quarterback Jackson Arnold to rush for less than 30 yards. So to join me in those picks, again, you can go to prizepicks.com/OnTexas. Use that promo code, which is OnTexas, and they're going to give you a first deposit match of up to $100. And that's Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Hey, I got to ask you, Blake, who are your picks to have big games on Monday for the Longhorns?
Oh, man.
Talk about Prize Picks and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is there a guy where you're like, I'll ask y'all. Let's ask this, just theoretically. Quinn Ewers, does he throw for 250 plus in this game? I think he has to for a Texas win. Y'all agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
Let me ask you a different question. how many yards does Texas have to run for to win? Not just C.J. Baxter or Jaden Blue specifically, but what's the run game number for Texas? Because last year, I thought that part of the problem for Texas, they couldn't get any run game going against Washington. So it was all on not only Quinn Ewers' right arm, but Xavier Worthy, who was injured and dropped a couple passes. What does Texas have to do in the run game? I think the pass game, we know. The run game is kind of that, what does Texas need to do? What are they going to be able to do against Washington this year? Either of y'all have a feel for that?
I like 160. And they've averaged about 189 this year, which is pretty good. But 160 is if you get a pedestrian rushing outcome for Texas's averages in this game, that's something that Washington will have to respect a whole lot. And I also think it'll be a much better showing than last year. Obviously, Christian Jones even said it, Bobby. Last year, coming into the game with no Roshan and Bijan, the offensive line was a little out of funk. They knew it right away. We have to do a little bit more. And as a result, I think they overstepped what they, necessarily needed to do at times. And obviously, Jonathan Brooks wasn't healthy either. So it's a much different approach this year. And I think the offensive line is in a better mind state coming into this game. But Blake, I'm sorry I cut you off there. I want to hear what you have too, because 160 I feel like is a pretty solid day on the ground.
Yeah, I was actually leaning pretty close to that as well. I was going to say about 140, 150. And I really think you need to see that effort that we saw in the fourth quarter against Alabama. How they did on that final drive. You got to have that through the entire game. You've got to set that tone early, or it could be a long night for sure.
They've got to have success other than just through the air.
Yep.
I think that's the key for both teams on offense. And both teams, frankly, have been able to do that this year. They have. They've been very. Go ahead, CJ.
You know what's interesting, Bobby? Washington's only rushed or averaged 5.0 yards per carry in one conference game this year. I was looking through that last night. Dylan Johnson has a tremendous stat line. Aside from him, and I know he gets the main bulk of those yards, but there hasn't been a dominant rushing game for Washington aside from USC, where they averaged almost 7.5 on 340 yards per carry. So it's been an up and down kind of we have to force ourselves to do it, because otherwise they're just going to drop 8 and we don't have anywhere to go with the football. It's never been a strength for Washington this year, aside from that USC game. So I think that's an interesting point coming in. They've sat right around that high 3.5 to 3.8 to 4.2. That's kind of been where they've averaged rushing attempts or rushing yards per attempt the entire season.
I was just looking on Prize Picks, Bobby, when you were giving that number about Quinn. Oddly enough, they don't have rushing numbers for Texas. They do almost every other bowl team. Texas and Washington, they do not have rushing numbers for. They do have Quinn at 288, Mitchell with 63 receiving yards, Sander with 44, Worthy with 72, and Baxter with 16 receiving yards are their numbers that they're projecting for people to pick, more or less.
Yeah, it's kind of the Vegas line, essentially. Yeah. For production. What did they have on Washington? Just go down that a little bit, because I think that's interesting.
Let me look here.
That's the problem with Prize Picks, because you hear that and you're like, yeah, of course, all of those are going to hit,
Yeah, there's a reason that the house always wins in Vegas, my man.
All right, so for Washington, they do have Dylan Johnson, the running back. They have 73 yards on the ground for him. And then for the receivers, Polk has 53. Westover, their tight end, has 19.5. McMillan has 76.5. For Penix, they have him at 313 passing yards. Odunze, 99.5. And then they also have Penix as 2.5 passing and rushing touchdowns.
Interesting. So. Hey, the thing that I would say this, 72 yards for Xavier Worthy would put him over 1,000 for the year. I forgot to even mention that. That's one of those numbers that's kind of magical to people. Odunze, with that number, goes over 1,500, by the way. So that gives you a sense of how prodigious he's been this year. I would, if Michael Penix only accounted for 3 touchdowns on Monday, I'd take that every day of the week if I'm Texas. Because if you're saying the over-under is 2.5, I would take that right now at 3 and go home. And if that happens, I think Texas wins.
Yeah.
That's just my thought process.
Man, yeah. And I was watching some film on Penix before we started, and he does such an amazing job of putting the ball where the defender cannot get it. I mean, it's unreal how he can do that.
He's legit. I mean, I was talking to Bob Shipley, and I talked a little bit about him, and he said he reminds him of Ken Stabler. Ooh. That was the name for the old guys out there. He's not got the strongest arm. He's got a strong arm, but it's not the strongest. But man, he just that little left-handed loopy throw, and it's just right on the money, and people are all around him, kind of, and Rod called it the clutch gene. The kid's got the clutch gene. So look, like I go back to what we started with today. I'm excited for this game because it's going to be two good teams, and we're going to find out exactly what's going on.
Yeah. We're going to get to some more questions right here on Coffee and Football, presented by Rick Vavro and Austin Underground. And let's start. We talked about predictions as far as the stats go, but Auto Pro wants to know the score predictions. So let's just start right there.
Oh, I have not done this yet. Myself, Bob Shipley, and Rod Babers are going to do a prediction show later this week. And I don't mind, giving it up early because I think that it's more about talking about it than it is actually the exact score. But I think this game's going to be in the 30s. And I think it's going to be something odd, like 33-29, 33-30, 34-30. I'm picking Texas. And I just feel CJ made a good point about the run game. Texas has to run the ball better. I think they will run the ball better this year against Washington than they did a year ago. I just feel like Texas is a little bit of a team of destiny. Not that Washington isn't, but they scooted in by the skin of their teeth at the end of the year a little bit too much, maybe. I think they ran through some times. Texas, I think, as someone said the other day, they're peaking at the right time. And I wish this game would have been played the very next week after Oklahoma State, because I would have picked Texas by more. Now that both teams have had a little settling to do, I think it's going to be a back and forth affair that's decided in the fourth quarter.
CJ?
Yeah, no, we've talked, at least I've talked about how quickly Washington starts. Texas is very good at that as well. But for whatever reason, in games like this, I think, it's a slower start. I think it's going to be almost, I don't want to call it too conservative because the shots will be there, but I think it's going to be a possession battle in the sense that neither team is going to want to give up what they have on their possession at the time because they want to take a shot down the field to give up a down or, essentially put themselves in harm's way with the football. So I'm looking at a slower start to the game. And then obviously I think it opens up like we saw against Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa this year, where the third quarter was really, all right, like who's getting the next 40-yard reception? The game really opened up in that kind of sense. I think that will kind of be the same kind of approach to this game, at least that I will have coming into it. Kind of a slow start, and then the second half we'll really get to see these teams start grinding and going. I think if either team hits 40, that team is winning. The first to 40, that team is winning. I don't think a team will hit 40, so I think it'll be in that range of 28-35, around that number right there.
And I got 37-31 Texas.
Woo!
So
that's the trifecta.
Yep. We'll see what happens, guys.
That's away there, man. That's
all right. We got a couple of super chats we need to get to. This first one from Shannon Hansen. Thank you, Shannon. He says, Cafe Beignets is awesome. Telling you this from overseas. Hook 'em.
Well, I'm going to try that out. I've got a couple of breakfast meetings there starting tomorrow into even Monday. I'm gonna go check that out. I'm ready for a little New Orleans food. It's been a long time since I've had some real etouffee, some real gumbo. So I'm ready for it.
And then, Bobby, you got a recommendation here from Jackie McCardle. He says, Bobby, you need to try Parkway Bakery and Tavern in NOLA and grab a po' boy.
I am driving, So just so y'all know, I'm driving. So if you have like outskirty type places that I need to drive to, hit me up at ontexasfootball@gmail.com. I have no problem going and doing that. So yeah, please.
I'll have to get you a list going for sure. Then we got another super chat from the ambassador of Texas. Thank you, ambassador. And he says, the true X factor for Texas, this team knows they are better than the opponent and has the culture to prove it on the field. F around and find out. Hook 'em.
Let's hope. Man, I want this bad. I think Texas fans want it bad. I think, we could talk about it until we're blue in the face, but the Longhorn basketball team had a chance to play in the Final Four in Houston this past year, and injuries just caught up to them in that Elite Eight game, in my opinion. Texas has a chance to play in the national championship game in Houston, where there's going to be a huge home field advantage potentially. If Texas can get there, I mean, I just telling you, rare things can happen in a year when we didn't expect it to necessarily be this great. That's why, there's just so much on the line on Monday. So much.
All right, guys, this next one here is from Doug, and he says, Bobby, teams tend to pick us apart across the middle. Do you think Sark will run more zone drops, and make Washington try to stretch the field?
It's what they did last year. Right, CJ? That's exactly what PK did. He kept everything in front of him. CJ, you take that one, because I think part of the reason Texas gets beat over the middle is their safeties are scared of getting beat over the top because they don't have makeup speed. That's my biggest take on it. CJ, how do you think they counteract that this year? More the same as last year?
Yeah, I think it's a very similar approach. And the approach to last year's game, in my opinion, worked out defensively. You held Washington well under their averages, both scoring and yardage totals. One thing I think that is interesting is when you go back and watch that game, the Texas look defensively pre-snap was a little unique. That necessarily wasn't something that we saw the entire season. And obviously, we're seeing teams now implement the three high, the flyover football approach to the Texas offenses. I think Texas showed a little bit of that last year, almost by, trial and error, because it was still that base quarters coverage that we saw throughout the season and have seen this year as well. But the alignment was much different than what we've seen in any other game so far this year, and even dating back to last year as well. So there's going to be a little toying of that this year, this Monday, in my opinion. It'll be interesting to see just how they adjust and tweak it to throw off Michael Penix.
I got this next question. Oh, Bobby, real quick, I got another one for you to write down from Cody Pack. He says you need to check out the Joint Barbecue in New Orleans. The owner learned to cook barbecue in Austin a while ago, then opened his own place in New Orleans. Good folks there. So you have to check out that recommendation.
Man,
all right, here we go. We got
New Orleans. If you just go to New Orleans, you can just go to New Orleans and do food.
Yeah,
for a week. I don't know. It is one of the few places. Like I'm not big on these. Like I can't go to do a bunch of shishi dinners like in New York or LA and go. I can't do that. That's just not who I am. But greasy spoons three times a day. You know what I mean? I'm okay with those. And New Orleans has those authentic local spots as well, or better than any place in the world. Man, I've been all over the United States, obviously, but it's just something else as far as their cooking. I love the spice, the way they cook, etc. It's just like a fusion of the entire world erupts there almost. It's really a cool town.
Hey, Bobby, before we move on, I'm going to let you tell everybody out there about Austin Underground one more time.
Yeah, absolutely. Austin Underground is led by Rick Vavro and his team. UT grad. Rick is engineer. Since 2004, Austin Underground has specialized in difficult underground commercial installations. The team's engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms often consider too risky. Rick, Tony, and his team offer an end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they produce solid quality work each and every time. That's Austin Underground if you're looking for underground commercial installations near you.
Okay, we got time for some more questions here. And this has actually been one that's asked a few times today. And hopefully one of y'all have the answer. Ski Breck says, are they using the headsets in the Sugar Bowl? And if so, how does it affect Sark and his ability to manage the game?
I haven't been told they're using those. They're trying them in a couple different bowl games, but I haven't heard that they're doing that in the Sugar Bowl. Is that, CJ, have you heard separately from that?
I've not. I'll check in, but that's not been something I've heard. I actually wasn't aware of it until yesterday when I heard that a few of these teams were looking to do that, and I think it was the West Virginia North Carolina game. They really made an emphasis on it, and I mean, I love it. I think it's easy to point it out, and it just makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, why would you? It's like Sark was saying. Why would you spend time on an assistant sitting there signaling in plays where that's all he does on game days when he could actually instead be coaching the players, and make a better product? Instead, they're having to. That's one of the things that you have technology for, is so that you don't have to, so that you can deploy human capital better, right? So I think that's the future, but I don't think it's happening in this game. If I'm wrong, I'll come back on tomorrow. I'll double check that tonight. All right.
Actually, the NCAA approved use of in-helmet communication this year for bowl games, not part of the college football playoff.
Oh.
There you go.
And mutual consent of both teams is required for those games as well. So you will not see it in the college football playoff.
So Brent Venables, who likes to steal signals, clearly did not allow that for his game, or will not. Yeah. Hey, did we get an update on the bowl outcomes and the records for teams yesterday? I know that the Big 12 remains undefeated. Both West Virginia
4-1.
Yeah. What now?
Did they? I thought they were 4-1 for some reason, or 3-1.
I don't think the Big 12 has lost yet. Have they?
Texas Tech won, West Virginia won, Oklahoma State won. I feel like I'm missing one.
No,
yeah, they are 4-1. I'm looking here. Someone's probably going to get it in the chat before I can find it. But hang on, Bobby. I'm going to bring this
I think
up
they're 4-0. I think you're looking at last year's number.
Let me see.
Yeah, yesterday they were 2-0 going into yesterday. West Virginia won and Oklahoma
UCF lost.
Oh, UCF. Well, that's why. Never mind. I wasn't counting them as a Big 12 team. That's probably my fault. So the Big 12 at 4-1. The SEC's only played one game thus far. That's 0-1. Pac-12 at 2-2.
Man, the whole Fun Belt got in, huh? Goodness.
5-7?
That's ridiculous.
Are you serious? They were 5-7 in bowl games this year. That's incredible. That's incredible. Big 10 looks good so far. Big 12 looks good so far. Pac-12 and ACC kind of split down the middle there.
And who's that one SEC loss, Bobby?
Yeah. It's the future Mike Elko's. I go back to that game and I watched that. I was unimpressed. I thought their young DBs would do more. I thought Bravion Rogers was going to be a real guy. What games are tonight, by the way? Do we have the game schedule for tonight?
Yeah, give me 1 second there. Bobby putting me on the spot here, but I got you covered. Don't worry. We're going to share this tab instead, and there you go.
Oh, look at that. That's today. We got
Boston College versus SMU. Hey, that comes on in like an hour.
Yep. We got a full slate today, fellas.
Would that make SMU an 11-win team if they take down Boston College, CJ?
It would, and I think the last 3 wins would come all with the backup freshman quarterback.
And that is who? Is that Stone or is that
Kevin Jennings out of South Oak Cliff?
Okay.
Preston Stone broke his leg heading in, I think, the week leading into the American Conference Championship game, and then Jennings stepped in, won the championship game, and then really put up some good points. So that team is rolling. That program is rolling.
So K-State, NC State this afternoon in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I got to love that one. That one's for my 17-year-old kid that still eats Pop-Tarts. And then there's Arizona Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl at 7:30, 8 o'clock. tonight.
And I'm excited for that one.
So all of those on ESPN, by the way, today.
I wonder what kind of offense Oklahoma's going to run without Jeff Lebby and without Dylan Gabriel. You know,
I think you'll see a lot of running from Arnold.
From Jackson Arnold?
Yeah. I think early on in the season, he was they kind of plugged and played him a little bit, you know, early in the year just to get him the feel of the football. But very rarely did you see him drop back, you know, traditionally for a pass. He was often that guy who, you know, they brought him in for a 3rd and 3 and let him just kind of pound it twice and move the chains, come off the field. So when he's on the field, he runs a lot. He's a great athlete. Obviously, I think the thing for him coming out of college was the touch that he had on a lot of his throws, but the athleticism is something that is very, very much underrated in my opinion about Jackson Arnold. So he'll be running the ball a lot tonight, in my opinion.
Hey, real quick, while we're on the subject of OU, did y'all see Brett Venables' comment about how Arizona is probably the best team that they're going to face all season?
Look, whatever.
I had to get Bobby going once this morning.
No, I mean, whatever. I mean, look, you know, I think that Venables, he had a good recruiting class, and I think that their best recruiting job this year, though, was getting the linebackers to come back, the safety to come back. You know what I mean? Now, they've got real issues on the offensive line, repairing there, but Bedenbaugh, their long-term offensive line coach, is going to do a good job. He's going to find some people, but I don't see them as being I don't know. I think they're going to be another year away.
Yeah, I got to definitely get that O-line in shape, though, since they lost every starter. All right, guys, we got a couple more super chats here. From this first one from V. Brown. He says, the 07 offense versus the 2023 offense. Who had the better units at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and O-line? We'll take them one by one. Let's start with quarterback. Colt McCoy, Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, but that was a sophomore Colt McCoy.
I think he means 2008.
Yeah, well, if it's 2008, I would take the 2008 offense. I would, because they were just on a roll. Not necessarily at yeah, I would take the 2008 offense overall. RB room with Jonathan Brooks, I would have given it to the 2023 group. Receiver core, it's tighter than you think, even though it was Shipley and Cosby, Mitchell and Worthy and Whittington, as well as even though they had Jermichael Finley, I think, in 08. O-line is definitely the 2023 unit. That's closer than you might think, guys. It's close. I do think that Colt in 08 should have won the Heisman over Bradford in some ways. So it's hard to take that away from him. He had just one of those years where it was just ungodly.
45-35. That's all I remember.
Yeah, exactly. 45-35. I just feel like that's a good question. I would probably go with the 2008 offense because I do think Colt was just special that year. Yeah.
This one made me laugh. Travis Acton said, I heard someone that was a Washington fan say that they're like 2019 LSU. I about spit out my coffee. What do y'all think?
No.
They set a record, an NFL draft record that year with 14, I think, coming out. 12 of those earned a starting job the first year. There's no comparison.
That weapon, the offensive weapon group is amongst the best we'll ever see. When you talk about Joe Burrow, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and then Terrace Marshall, who was a 5-star coming out of high school, was the third guy there. So I don't know. They're pretty good. Thaddeus Moss at tight end as well. I mean, Washington's good. They're 13-0. They're putting up good numbers. They're not LSU from 2019. No,
not at all. All right, Bobby, get ready for another recommendation. This super chat from Major Alexander. He says, go to Dragos, I'm not sure, by the shopping center and get the grilled oysters.
I'm going to end up being 300 pounds before y'all get rid of me. I have no problem taking recommendations. I really don't. I love this stuff. There's a lot of downtime. There's a lot of downtime when you go and cover a bowl, by the way, guys, because there's only one practice a day. The players have to go be at some fundraiser for, whatever. There's only so many press conferences you can have. And so a lot of it is just literally loitering around the city. Right. And I hope that I see some of you guys out there. Don't forget, I want to mention this before we get going today. We have that tailgate experience. It's at Manning's in New Orleans. That's Archie Manning's place. Caesars Entertainment runs it from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. All you have to do is buy a general admission ticket. CJ and I, as well as Aaron Hogan, we're all going to be there delivering news and information all day long, live on Texas football. I'm also going to be there. You get free. You get food with that, and then free non-alcoholic beverages with a regular admission ticket. I think it's $100 for a regular admission ticket to this party, but 50 of it goes directly to the Texas One Fund. Go to texassugarbowl.party for details. Again, we'll be there. There'll be some former players there as well coming in and out. There also might be some other surprise guest appearances through the week or through the day, on Monday. But they have over 100 TVs at Manning's. You're going to be able to watch every single game you want to watch, be with a lot of Longhorn fans. Join us if you can. I think they're running out of tickets right now. So if you're going, you're going to want to go ahead and get it done sooner rather than later.
Be sure to check that out. And hey, guys, Coach Sark just posted this on Twitter here. I want to share this with y'all. He says, all gas, no brakes, and then passion, devoting yourself to a goal through relentless commitment and dedication.
Kobe.
Yeah.
You can't take the Southern California out of Sark there. That obviously a reference to Kobe Bryant.
Yeah. All right, this will be the last question for today, and this one from Bobby TD Brown. He says, who do y'all have in the Rose and the Alamo Bowl? Alamo Bowl, obviously Arizona and Oklahoma starting tonight around 7:30. So we'll start with that one. Who's y'all's pick?
I've got Arizona in a blowout, 3 touchdowns.
Ooh.
They've got all their guys. Jackson Arnold's not going to do it. Oklahoma run game will be minimal. The Rose Bowl is a little bit different. I'm going to take Alabama by 1 score, and it's going to be something like 20-17. That's what I got. What do you think?
Yeah, I like both of those. Arizona was actually the first wager I placed when bowls were announced, just because I liked how much they were going to come into this game thinking how much it would matter to them. Obviously, Oklahoma is, a very prideful program, but they're obviously losing 16 guys to the portal already. Quarterback's gone. Play caller's gone. It's one of those things. You're trying out a freshman quarterback starting for the first time. I think Arizona is the team coming in that is favored and should be favored by a little bit more. I like them to win. I'm with you. I think Michigan actually smacks Alabama early. I think it's one of those things. The power running game for Michigan is something that you don't often see anymore. And when you haven't seen that anymore, and it's after a month off, it's one of those things that will hit you like a ton of bricks. So I like Michigan come out starting hot early in that game, but I think Alabama's just a little bit too dynamic offensively to stay behind. I like Milroe and that team coming back from behind and winning by a score or 2.
Hey, that would be a repeat. That'd be a repeat for, instead of Tuscaloosa, it'd be Houston if Texas plays Alabama. Blake, what did you have on those 2 games?
Yeah, I'm with you. Arizona and Alabama, although I think Alabama wins by about 8-10, and then I got Arizona by about 10-14.
All right.
3 touchdowns, Arizona. That's my bet. I don't bet, but that would be it if it were.
That's your pick. Hey, Bobby, real quick before we get out of here, Zane Petty has a question about Manning's. He said, I'm taking my daughter. Can she get into Manning's at 18 years old? I don't know if it's 21 and up. Do you know that by any chance?
I don't know that by chance. I know there are a bunch of kids that are going, though, like that are 12 and up. There you go. So I think, but you need to, guys, I can't promise. I don't know everything about this party. I'm part of the entertainment, if that makes sense, believe it or not. What I would say is go to their website and make sure you read all the details, please, first. Texas Sugar Bowl .party. They're literally, I think there's over 1,500 Longhorn fans already signed up to go through various different websites, et cetera. It should be a really cool experience to kind of take over New Orleans.
For sure. Going to be a fun time, no doubt about it. So be sure to check that out, hang out with Bobby and crew. And guys, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. We got to thank Rick Vavro and Austin Underground, along with Prize Picks, for being the sponsors of today's show. And thanks for all the questions, the super chats. And we'll be back same place, same time tomorrow. Of course, Bobby and CJ, I know you guys will be probably in a different location, different background, as Bobby said earlier. But we will be back tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock right here on Texas Football. So for CJ and Bobby, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you next time.
Hook 'em all.